Episode 118, Katharine Wibell. Good morrow, and welcome to the Realm. I'm J.V. Hilliard, and if you're an author or an artist who has ever wondered how to use a Kickstarter campaign, well, this is the show for you. I've got a special guest, Katharine Wibell, and here's my interview with her, and she's doing just that. Katharine, welcome to the Realm.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
No, it's my pleasure. I can see your books lined up behind you, and a lot of my viewers and followers are familiar with your several series. And I know that you're also an artist, you're a painter, and we'll get into those in a minute. But I wanted to first kick off the conversation today by asking you about your works in progress. I know you have several, so you're pretty diligent, I'll put it that way. And so I'm interested in learning what you got on tap.
Okay, so as you kind of mentioned, I have 3 series at the moment. One's a complete series behind me called the Incarn Saga, and that's a dark shifter fantasy based in around a war. I have a Vikings dark fantasy aimed more for adults. They're novellas, so they're quicker reads. And kind of seeing over my head over here, I have the first 2 books published of my young adult adventure fantasy, portal fantasy. All my series go under epic fantasy. I'm also hoping to, before the end of the month, release the omnibus, so a collection of volumes 5 through 8 of my Viking series in a single binding for people who like print, because for me, my novellas are only ebook until I get them in bundles of 4, just because I like a decent sized spine on a bookshelf. I'm also gearing up for a release of the 3rd book, which will be the Underrealms of my young adult adventure fantasy. And that one I'm playing a new thing. So right now I'm trying out the Kickstarter launch approach to help kind of fund some of the upfront costs of a book release.
So I've done a bunch of these interviews, and I've never had an author on that has done a Kickstarter campaign. Tell my viewers a little bit about that. Is it working? What your goals are? And if they're authors, which many of them are, how they can use that as a tool in their tool chest.
Well, I will admit, I am not an expert at this by any means. I have some other authors that I know who have thankfully kind of held my hand through this process. Because it's a lot, I had to put a lot of time, several months in advance, to plan on what I'm offering to people who are going to pledge money my way. As certain perks, I'll be doing a lot of signed copies of books, bookish merchandise like bookmarks and stickers and whatnot that way. So when people log on to Kickstarter and look at the Underrealms, you can get stuff that no other readers will be able to get because it's exclusive as a perk for supporting a Kickstarter. So it's a fun tool, but there's a lot of prep work on the author side of things. And just take your time if you're considering this to make sure you do your research, because that can help you know what is working for someone else that might help you make it work for you.
I think that's great advice. But you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to get back to. You said you write your books young adult. I saw that some of your books you would rate as new adult, and then others are just standard adult fare. For those who are watching that don't know what new adult is, can you explain that a little bit as well?
Okay, so in the literature world, there are always new terms coming out, and I feel like every day I'm learning a new subcategory or something. Young adult is any book where the main character or main characters are age 13 through 17. New adult category kind of broke away, and that's allowing writers, hopefully, to be able to deal with some of those maybe more charged topics than someone at 13.
So I get it. Let me change the subject on you a little bit, if you don't mind. Okay. I know that outside of your authorship, you are an artist and you're a painter. Can you tell our viewers and our followers a little bit about what you're doing there and where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, so when I'm not living in my multiverses of magic, my other hat I wear is the fact that I am an artist. I do a style called reverse glass painting. Essentially, I paint directly on the glass. The glass itself is my canvas, and I have to paint in a mirror image fashion, starting from whatever is going to be the closest to you visually all the way to your background. Let the piece dry, flip it around, and you will see the final product. So that sounds very bizarre.
That sounds to me like it's almost like you're living in an upside down world.
I know. I think my parents would sometimes agree, but I feel like being artistic in one way doesn't mean you don't have to be artistic in another. And for me, they're just ways to express things I love. I love everything to do with animals. I paint animals. I love everything to do with mythology. So I write, on the high fantasy side of things.
I got you. So you mentioned something at the top of the show that I want to get back to. You mentioned that the series that you have that has sort of like a Viking and a Norseman background to it. I noticed that. Did you get Athelstan to be your voice for your audiobook? That is awesome. How did you pull that off?
He approached me. No, he actually did approach me. I had open calls because I was trying to find a narrator and I was sorting through. And at the time I was trying to decide, did I want a female narrator versus male? I'll admit, it is the funniest. If George ever watches this, it was funny the way he emailed me and he was like, hi, I don't know if you are okay with a British narrator. I know you're trying to do Vikings, but my name's George Blagden, and you might have seen me maybe on Vikings as Athelstan. And I was like, no way. So one of those surreal moments you have to pinch yourself is like, no, he did not just approach me. And I was like, he was like, so is it okay if I, audition? I'm like, yes, please audition.
You don't have to audition. Here's the script, right? So glad that we got back to that. But as we're coming to the end of the realm, one of the things we do with all of our guests is we ask 3 or 4 lightning round questions. And what I'd like to do is, hit you with a question that's a this or that, or 1 or 2 word answers. Just throw out whatever comes to mind. And
I'm bad at these. Okay.
All right. So the first one is do you have a favorite fantasy character, and who is it?
Oh my goodness. Spazzing. See, I'm not good at these talks. I don't know if there's actually one that strikes me anything. Obviously, some of the fun ones throughout, reading are, the powerhouse. At least initially, you have Dany from the Song of Fire and Ice. I'm always drawn to female leads who are facing odds either because they are female or they're raised in an environment which is kind of suppressing their skill level and kind of demeaning them, and they rise above. So she was a fun one.
All right. Okay. So next question is, since you're a Vikings fan and you've written stuff in that tradition, do you have a favorite Viking story?
I do. And actually, unfortunately, be warned, people, because the story I'm going to choose is probably going to, I don't know if it's going to be this next season or the season after of Vikings Valhalla. Because as soon as they named Freydis, I was like, oh, I like her. I like her story. I have her epic on my bookshelf. But as for a Viking story, she's pretty cool because when she's brought to the Americas, she was one of the Viking group that tried to settle in the Americas. And the famous story is that while their settlement was being attacked, she comes out topless. With 2 weapons in her hands and screaming, and the Native Americans had never seen any woman or anything as frightening as that, and they retreat temporarily. And so for that night, she kind of saved their group.
I got it. Okay, so who is your favorite character, one that you've written, and why would you choose that character?
Okay, that's a cruel question because everyone is my favorite. With that said, my go-to answer is, even though I have characters I love in all my series for different reasons, I have to say for my young adult series, the main character was my alter ego growing up. So she actually has my name. She's called Katie of Earth. And since I'm Katharine, I was like, I have to pick her because she was my alter ego growing up as a child, running around in the woodlands of Georgia and the fields and everything. So I have to pick her.
Oh. Cool. Well, Katie of Earth, thank you very much for being on the realm today. And we appreciate your time and thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Man, I thought I was busy. And then you talked to Katharine and she's got more irons in the fire than anybody I know. And speaking of irons in the fire, book 3 of the Warminster series has just gone into editing. So the Trillius Gambit should be available through all of the distribution channels that you can typically find my books in the late March, maybe early April timeframe of 2023. And I'm also going to be at the Richmond Galaxy Con starting on March 24th in Richmond, Virginia. And I hope to see you in person there. Come on over and I'll get you a signed book. Thanks again for visiting the realm. I'm J.V. Hilliard, and may your gods go with you.